Namaste. So today we read a prayer of the Mother, November 25th, 1913. And so though the prayer relates basically to one of the difficulties when we sit for meditation, but it has larger universal implications. So what are the difficulties when we sit for meditation? One of them is restlessness. Have you noticed suddenly the legs start moving or they will start aching at a crucial point where it was not aching? So, this one difficulty. The second is falling asleep. Why? Because the moment you sit, it is tamas. We identify life with activity. So, the moment people want to be quiet, they fall into sleep. Of course, a good sleep, but sleep is not meditation. You have to learn to conquer it. Third is the difficulty of concentrating itself. So, why we are unable to concentrate? Why should it be so difficult? Why? Because even first is because we are not accustomed to it. We are not accustomed to let the thoughts flow in a certain direction. Have you noticed when we go to our mother has compared it to a public square where all kinds of cars, trucks, scooters coming from every direction. Now we can compare it also to WhatsApp messages. Click one, nice saying of the mother. Click the second one video where there is a Bollywood song going on. Click the third one, there is a random something about politics. Click the fourth one. So what is happening now? Mind is in a total khichdi. Everything then there is a message. Relevant or irrelevant. Then suddenly I use something about the virus. Some doctor so and so. Anybody who says I am doctor so and so. Doctor means he must be right. After God or even God may be wrong. Yogi may be wrong, but any random doctor, with or without a lab coat, saying anything on the WhatsApp must be right. I must follow it immediately. If he says get up and drink 2 liters water, I must get up and drink 2 liters of water. I can't be sitting after that. Why? Because the doctor has said so. Suddenly we'll see somebody saying, no, do this kind of pranayama immediately. So our mind has become a WhatsApp place. Why? Because we have never tried to train it. One of the big advantages of education is it teaches us to train the mind, develops the mental muscles, and teaches us to focus in one direction. And you can try it with anything. Take up any external work. Take up a handwork. One of the simplest ways to focus the mind. Be it sweeping the floor, be it just cleaning. Do it with utmost awareness. Don't start by inner concentration. It's very difficult. Then another way is just learn to focus on the breath because it's something tangible. Then take up another symbol, an image, a thought, an idea, a mantra. Yet, even when we are doing it, have you noticed that when you are sweeping the floor, suddenly the mind goes somewhere else? When you are sitting and taking the name of the mother, whom we love, suddenly the mind goes into, and without your knowledge, it has slipped. Where has it slipped? It is not slipped into some immediate urgent engagement. That is understandable. That there is something preoccupying you. It just slips into some kind of a burrow hole. Into its own land. Then suddenly after some time you realize, 20 minutes are over. I was supposed to meditate for 20 minutes. Now it's all gone. You bring it back. Then after some time again it goes. And it needs years of sustained effort, at least months, before one can just habituate the mind to thinking along one word, one sentence, one idea. So what is the way to train the mind? Read Sri Aurobindo. Read one chapter of the Life Divine in one go. Don't worry about understanding it. You see, the mind will learn to focus in a steady state on a higher plane of consciousness. Otherwise, the moment it touches the higher planes, it becomes, Dr. Saab, अच्छा बोला आपने. क्या बोला? अब नींद आ गई थी. I had that joke, no? Somebody told once, oh, Dr. Saab has come, for the camp. खूब भालो बोलता है. It's in Bangla original, then I'll tell you the Hindi and the English. So in Hindi, the speaker is called as Vakta, Shuddha Hindi. And the hearer is called Shrota. क्या वक्ता है, मतलब what a wonderful speaker. क्या श्रोता है, what a wonderful listener. So the person says, डॉक्टर साहब, अब उसी को बंगाली में ट्विस्ट करके हो गया, डॉक्टर साहब की बौखता है. अब बौखता मीन्स नॉनसेंसिकल स्पीच. की बौखता है और डॉक्टर साहब बौखता है, हम ही सोता है. श्रोता becomes sota, sleeps. So that's because we are not habituated. You see, that's why people find difficult to read Sri Aurobindo, because when you enter into a higher state, why Sri Aurobindo didn't make it as simple as, वो चवन्नी वाला किताब? Because he didn't come to give that Gita Press Gorakhpur वाला ज्ञान, जो हुआ अच्छा हुआ, जो होगा अच्छा होगा. No. He came to give us solid thing. And there was a reason. Letters on yoga are very direct. But he said, I have brought it up to here, you strain your neck a little, because that's how evolution will take place. But people then give up. I will not read. Read, doesn't matter if you understand or not, you will learn to concentrate. That's the minimum. So then, even after all that, if you again sit for meditation, as I said, there are things which are always going on as a background noise. To give an example, right now, I am speaking and we are all listening. Supposing I stop speaking, you can listen something which was in the background. The fan, isn't it? When your attention is on the speech, that background thing goes behind. So the same thing applies here. In the background, there's a lot of noise going on in all of us. Where is this noise going on? Sri Aurobindo says the troglodytes of the subconscient. Troglodytes are cave dwellers. It's all the time whispering. Sometimes he compares it to the little animal, the demon and the jinn. And the moment the surface, this rational mind, the other conscious mind begins to become quiet, they say, now we have our chance. So they begin to, those whispers and murmurs become very prominent. They're all the time going on, this background noise. In sleep you'll see it rising up. When you are quiet you will see this rising up. Because that's the subconscious mind. It is a very powerful grip. And Sri Aurobindo says that how they are, he explains it beautifully. He says the troglodytes of these minds. So what do? Subconscious mind, they just notations they send. And they enter into the conscious mind and appear as letters and words. And we think it is I who am thinking. And then we are caught up and drawn into that web. Subconscious mind will drag. Try to experience it. Don't try to experience it. There must be enough experience. Suddenly you were all right, fine. Then you are seized with a thought and you are dragged into your net, because subconscious is a damn dangerous place. Once you go into it, then it's like further and further. And it can catch the mind in a net for quite some time. It has good things also, subconscious, but that's its power. The least it will do is not let you really become quiet. So, but there are many layers of the subconscious. It is the last bastion to change. That's why wishful thinking doesn't change us. In Savitri, often people ask, why after greater life, little life, glory and the fall of life, Canto wise, book 2. Kingdoms of the little life, kingdoms of the greater life. Where does Sri Aurobindo enter after that? The descent into night. Because there is a subconscious, it doesn't allow greater life to go beyond a point. Greater life, you will see high aspirations, wishes, this world should be beautiful, love should be perfect, everything. And yet it doesn't happen. So Sri Aurobindo says, he turned to see that wide world failure's cause. Everybody has wishful thinking, no? Everybody says life should be beautiful. But it doesn't take place. Why? Because there is this fellow saying, I am there. Why subconscious has such a big grip? Because creation has emerged out of the subconscious. From inconscient to subconscious, then the beast is inside us, the demon is inside us, the Rakshasa, Asura is, all the stages of evolution are inside us. Only the appearance is human. Something human is also there. And the God is still to awaken. So because of that, the hold of the subconscious is so strong, it doesn't allow us to go. Till it changes. And it's the place from where all habits and patterns emerge. So you decide in the morning, today I'll be free. Ma, make me free. And she makes you free. Then as the evening is falling, now your mind is tired. So subconscious in a tired mind easily has a chance. Or in boredom, if you're getting bored, watching TV mechanically, then slowly the subconscious mind rises to the surface. Again takes grip. You have cast it off, so there is a tussle of a different kind. Ultimately, grace conquers. You have to keep on enduring, steady. Invocation of grace will become slowly, the subconscious become more and more conscient. You become aware of the dreams. That's a sign that you are conquering the subconscious mind. And even not you, but the divine grace is conquering. And eventually, it more or less you have a certain mastery over it. But it's a long process. So this what she is describing here. November 25th, 1913, the greatest enemy of a silent contemplation turned towards thee is surely this constant subconscious registering of the multitude of phenomena with which we come into contact. All that we think, WhatsApp that I have seen, delete the messages. So what happens? My friend tells me you can retrieve it. There is a way to retrieve it. They're all archived somewhere. They can come. The only thing is you need CBI or a hacker. You can get into it. Why? Because same thing applies in the mind. Every experience of life is imprinted. In the very matter, it is there right behind. We have forgotten about it, but it's there. And see, it will come automatically in reactions. There are people with whom you had a certain association, sometimes even with names. Sometimes just a little experience of a person wearing a fur coat and you had a unhappy experience. And the moment you see an animal with furs, you react. When you see a human being with thick hairs, you react. Because you had an experience of this kind. This is the power of the subconscious mind. So everything that has ever taken place is there. Chitragupt, that's what I keep saying. It's the Chitragupt. Chitragupt, hidden camera. Everything it has registered. So long as we are mentally active, our conscious thought veils for us this overactivity of our subconscious receptivity. So we don't realize it. That's why this is the problem of civilization, outer manners. Oh, he's a nice person. How do nice people behave? When you go there, नमस्ते जी आइए, आपका एयर इंडिया विमान में स्वागत है. अब ये उड़ान भरने के लिए हम तैयार हैं. आपको लगेगा दुनिया की जो द मोस्ट disciplined, well-behaved people. And when the same people go back to their homes, because, and it's not only that, even doctors, everybody, very nice smile. Please come. Yes, you sing. Yes, please tell me a problem. The moment the patient goes, or when you are, what a day, such patients, they eat your brain. No, I'm saying not all doctors do it. Or else, when they go home, they are very same person. In front of you is one, because activity of the mind, civilization, all this manners, behavior has become a way of life to deceive. Because people can be cheated by appearances, no? So people have learned to present themselves well. You are selling yourself as a product. But behind that animal, the jinn, everybody is there. Just give him a chance, meet the same person alone, with no holds barred, and see how the person behaves. So this is the overactivity of a subconscious receptivity. An entire part of a sensibility, and perhaps not the smallest, acts like a cine camera. Chitragupta. Cine camera, without our knowledge and indeed to our detriment. That's why in yoga it is advised, what you watch, you don't watch, be careful. You are watching a nice, titillating song and you think it's cool, what's wrong with it? Yes, song is over, you had your food, but now it has gone inside and imprinted upon the cell a way of awakening. So everything, that's why one should be same. Corona, you're watching all the news. You think that you are becoming very wise person. Now the moment you go to bed, इंडिया में आज के मरने वालों की संख्या, and see, the mind is eaten away, literally. Today only, I was, now I am aware of this. So suddenly the news comes, बहुत दुख की बात है कि भारत में आज, आई वॉज वेटिंग की मॉर्टेलिटी फिगर इट वॉज गोइंग टू से, और दुख की बात है कि भारत में आज 3,500 लोग मर गए. तो आई वाज जस्ट सेइंग, फॉर गॉड्स सेक, देयर इज ए 1.25 crore population, 3,500 people dying. Have a heart. I mean, every day lakhs are dying for various reasons, as if nothing is happening except for this. And it's all mechanical. The news reader is, she has to present as if a big. And human beings, they just receive mechanically. Oh, 3,500 mar gaye. Just think rationally what it means. It means very, very little. If you just apply your mind, you will say, if out of 4 lakh cases, 3,000 have died, it is less than 1%. Just apply the rational mind. And for every detected case, there is one which is undetected at least. But no. Oh, so many people have died. How many you asked sometime? Oh, today, they were saying 3,500. That's how the whole thing is. Population is still growing. Watch it, in front of the Delhi. It is only when we silence our active thought, which is relatively easy. Many techniques concentrate on one object, one idea, one thought, that we see this multitude of little subconscious notations surging up from every side and often drowning us under their overwhelming flood. They were just waiting. It's like you've suddenly opened a trapdoor. So they rise and start over. So it happens that as soon as we attempt to enter the silence of deep contemplation, we are assailed by countless thoughts. Observe, no? Normally when you are conversing, there are no such thoughts. You can focus. Suddenly you sit for meditation. Where are they coming from? Now there is nobody with whom you are engaged in conversation, because they are all the notations which have gone inside. The notations are in images, something you have seen, whatever. They will take forms of thought by stealing the substance of the mind. They have to rise up as thought. So a lot of waste material is lying. So they'll pick up and a thought will come. Another they will pick up and a thought will come. Or they will be like thoughts circulating in the subconscious of the world. So it will enter. If thoughts they could be called, which do not interest us in the least, do not represent for us any active desire, any conscious attachment. Thoughts which actually are meaningless, not even they are some desire, some attachment, but only prove to us our inability to control what may be described as the mechanical receptivity of our subconscious. Like a song going on mechanically inside the head. A considerable labor is needed to silence all these useless noises, to stop this wearisome train of images, and to purify one's mind of these 1,000 little nothings, so obstructing and worthless. And it is so much time uselessly lost. It is a terrible wastage. That's why in yoga many times it's advised, not to too much get into company, gossip. I remember one very touching incident. Someone told me about Navchat ji. So he once told the mother, very often people say, I'm not able to remember. So he said, I am able to remember you most of the time, except when I am eating. You know what question mother asked him? Do you eat alone or do you eat with people? I eat with family members. And he got the answer. He started eating alone. Now this is the way we master the subconscious. Now those were the days and people who, took to yoga in such a conscious way. And while now the difference is that the supramental force is very active, but yet whatever minimum, we should try to do that. At least even when we are eating, instead of nonsensical things going on, bring in something beautiful. Converse about something very nice, something on Mother and Sri Aurobindo, rather than just random, what happened in the next door, what happened to my, always there is a neighbor. And the remedy. So she says, what is the remedy? In an oversimple way, certain ascetic disciplines recommend solitude and inaction. Why? But she says it's oversimple. That's why many people, knowing this, they withdraw into solitude time to time, if not all the time. Sheltering one's subconscious from all possible registration. I'll not watch TV, I'll not meet people. That seems to me a childish remedy. Why? For it leaves the ascetic at the mercy of the first surprise attack. It's okay as an individual, but the moment you enter into life, how are you going to avoid this world? Everywhere the world is there. And if one day, confident of being perfectly master of himself, he wants to come back among his fellow men in order to help them, his subconscious, so long deprived of its activity of reception, will surely indulge it more intensively than ever before, as soon as the least opportunity offers. That's what happens to India in a way, because India had strong ascetic tendencies. And during the medieval times, again, because of all this pressure of this, invasion from European invasion, Mughal invasion, so the Hindu mind went into an ascetic mode. And even our generation grew up partly into that. So what happened now, you will see suddenly the indulgent, which is all right because that Rajas has to wake up. It has a tendency to go into ascetic mode. The moment it saw the challenge of life, now this, because you can't always remain in that, but that was a remedy people had adopted. She says this is childish. But in olden times it was the way of the Gita, the way of works. There is certainly another remedy. What is it? Undoubtedly, one must learn to control one's subconscious just as one controls one's conscious thought. So, the moment you have to catch it as it begins to come up, observe it. Otherwise, you'll see that, in fact, when the sadhana dips into the subconscious, then this is exactly what the gain takes place subsequently. Because you become conscious of those things. Otherwise, they are mechanically affecting you without you realizing. Some people go through those states of depression, they don't know why. Because it's right there. And then you begin to become aware at the very first notation and quiver that, oh, this fellow. So she says that there must be many ways of achieving this: regular introspection in the Buddhist manner and a methodical analysis of one's dreams. What are these thoughts that are assailing me, besieging me? Where are they coming from? What is their truth? Right perception, right understanding. Then the other is, he says, mastery of dreams. Why? Because dreams, subconscious activity. So, in fact, one of the effects of yoga is that we begin to become aware of our dreams, because the consciousness extends into the subconscious domains. Formed almost always from this subconscious registration, are part of the method to be found. But there is surely something more rapidly effective. In this prayer, she doesn't mention it, but she gives a clue. And that something more effective is the silence of the Lord, the grace of the Divine Mother. She herself, she describes this experience when to Sri Aurobindo. She says, this was one thing which was continuing. She had the experience of the Divine. She could separate into 12 bodies, but this subconscious activity of thoughts were continuing. She says when she met Sri Aurobindo, she says, I sat at his feet by the side, and her husband was busy talking to Sri Aurobindo. He believed, the husband believed that this world is by desire, Buddhist influence. Sri Aurobindo said, no, it is delight. She said, after some time when they were discussing, she completely was out of that zone. And suddenly she realized that subconscious activity of the mind was completely silenced. She did nothing, said nothing, asked nothing. So that is the silence of the Lord descending from above and the grace of the Divine Mother. So, but here she doesn't give that remedy but hints at it. O Lord, eternal Master, Thou shalt be the teacher, the inspirer. Thou wilt teach me what should be done. This 1913. Thou shalt teach me what should be done, so that after an indispensable application of it to myself, I may make others also benefit from what thou hast taught me. She did give silence to people, but she says that it's so difficult. They think they are going stupid. Sri Aurobindo could easily give silence, and then he says that that person thought he has gone stupid. The mother, somebody had the experience of the infinite in the finite, and he suddenly felt very nervous because all your measures of the mind are broken. Infinite is infinite. That's what Sri Aurobindo says. Infinite's logic is very different. He says the crime of God in Savitri says is that he doesn't act according to us. He acts according to how an infinite would. Not according to a limited mental logic, but he says this is his crime. So, of course, humorously, with a loving and trustful devotion, I bow to thee. So, this is the subconscious mind, and this is the real problem of transformation. It's not just matter, but matter is supported by that. It habitually responds to the subconscious forces because subconscious forces have needed it till now. They have pressed into it. They filled into it doubt. Mother says matter by nature is defeatist. It cannot believe that grace can just correct it. The cells are defeatist, pessimist by nature. So every time pessimism comes up, what has the mother said? Pessimism is the tail of the devil. All this comes from the subconscious. So let us pray with the loving, what she has said, let us also do that. With the loving and trustful devotion, I bow to thee. This is the method. Namaste.